Game face.
Hi, I'm Allison Jornlin, and I'm from the website MilwaukeeGhosts.com. And this is my friend Fred.
Hello, my name's Fred. I'm from cityofthedeadtours.com, based over here in Edinburgh, Scotland, taking people through the Black Mausoleum and Greyfriars Graveyard to see all about the Mackenzie poltergeist, world famous, and also down to the South Bridge Vaults, one of Edinburgh's most haunted locations, already in a city fabled for all of its paranormal activity. And it's a real pleasure to be here with you here, Alison.
Oh, thank you. Likewise. Well, so we're talking today just to give people an idea of what we're all about, because we're speakers on the paranormal circuit, and so that's what we're mainly going to be talking about today, all things paranormal. So, Fred, how did you get started with all this weird stuff?
Well, my journey into this was entirely accidental. I started off my BFF, my first flatmate from studying up here in Edinburgh. He ended up working for the ghost tour company originally. It's his job to look after tours and give him a wee fright. And yeah, it took him about 4 years or so to talk me into doing this. I wasn't really interested. Eventually I showed up after his patient cajoling, and then yeah, it turns out I got hooked. Really interesting. People are fascinating and it's a great job. Yeah, the nice community, and just there's so few professions in the world where you can run around in a graveyard, sneaking up on people, screaming at them in the dark, and then getting handsomely rewarded for it. It's quite a niche role, I think.
So, let's talk about your beliefs as pertains to the paranormal. So you were reluctant at first to get involved in the ghost tourism angle of it. And why was that? Was that because you were a skeptic to things paranormal, or what would you say?
It wasn't something that I had really had anything to do with before. Both my mother and my sister were convinced that the house we grew up in, well, myself and my sister grew up in, was haunted. They'd seen some ethereal lady walking through. I had experienced nothing of the sort, neither had my father. It was not really on my radar, was the answer.
Okay, all right, we gotta pause right there and talk a little bit more about that. So, your mother and your sister have experiences, and they've actually seen an apparition, which is, on the spectrum of paranormal experiences, that is pretty rare. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Are you sure it's so rare? The more I speak to people who come up to me after the tours, the more people profess to having seen something, experienced something. So, I think if you were to quiz them on it, certainly, apart from the one or two times they've mentioned it, they've never been vocal about it. They've never been proponents or, never espoused paranormal activity and studied it, researched it, or spoken to people much about it. So I think there's maybe a fourth camp of people, perhaps. Those who believe and talk about it plenty, those who are skeptics, those who sit on the fence, and I suspect there's this fourth hidden group of people who've experienced something and don't really make any more mention of it.
Yeah. Let's come back to that. That's an important point that I've been pondering about lately myself. So why does your mom and why does your sister think that your former home is haunted?
I don't think they've ever mentioned it as haunted. They just mentioned they had seen some kind of spectral lady walking through it once or twice, and that's over the course of 18 years. So
I know, but still pretty dramatic. Hey, there's a ghost lady walking through the house. I mean, pretty spectacular. Never happened at my house. Does the home have a long history?
I have no idea.
All right. Well, we've exhausted that angle. Okay.
It happened to me recently. Previously, I don't know how history is taught in the States, but for here, whenever I was in history class, it was always once we got past the bits I really enjoyed, the Romans, the Egyptians, the dinosaurs, prehistoric man, those were fun because I could imagine what it'd be like. But once we got into modern history, but I guess history of the last like 2,000 years or so, it was very boring. Maybe last 1,000 years or so. Here is a place, here is a king, here is a battle. Some crap went on.
Drama, kings and queens back then.
But it's
boring.
But the actual like context, the social context of it, and the bits around it are remarkably complex, especially in the UK. I imagine they are elsewhere as well. And it's probably quite a lot for an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old to take on board. There's a lot to go through, and a lot to learn. So it was only really like I quit history when I was 14, as soon as I could. Had no interest in it whatsoever. History was done. We here to learn remarkably little from history, it turns out, since we seem to keep committing the same sins over and over again. But when I started doing this job, I found out that there was so much that these experiences, that this history, that it was relevant even today, that people were still people. Even then, there was so much to learn about the human condition, what it's like to be us under these circumstances, what it's like to be living in a small, dark space that wasn't fit for keeping goods, in which people lived in significant numbers with death, like a daily experience all around them. These are the bits that I really enjoyed about it. And for me, the spooky stuff around it was very much just an exercise in people watching. I find it fascinating, all of it, a fascinating insight into what it is to be human, what these experiences, both old and new, tell us about ourselves, and again, like how little we moved on, really. I think because there's no bypassing being human. We're still human, after all this time.
Well, let's go back to what you were saying, that fourth group of people, that group that experiences things, but yet they don't talk about it at all. So I've been ruminating about that because over the last few days, at the time of this recording, I've been going on kind of a Mothman pilgrimage. There's been
I'll ask you about this.
Oh, okay. There's been a recent flap in Chicagoland, and so that's nearby. And I thought, it'd be fun, and also give me practice driving in kind of a scary place. So that adds, to the adrenaline a little bit, because I haven't seen any monsters, so I got to get to the adrenaline from somewhere. But I've been looking, night and day, sometimes in fairly dangerous conditions, for the Mothman, and recording video of all the sighting locations from the recent flap. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm following in the footsteps of the witnesses and, showing people a panoramic view via video of the location so people can get an idea of, what might have been experienced there or not. And just seeing what we could learn by following in the footsteps and reading these accounts and seeing what makes sense and what doesn't. So, I wonder, this makes me wonder, are any of these reports real? I mean, some of them I think are obviously trolls. But then I'm in a weird situation where, I used to be total cynic about this kind of stuff. And, although I was interested in the paranormal, I just saw too much of people being hysterical and just not asking any questions, not even to mention the right questions. I mean, just, I don't know, just making things up, I guess. I mean, I don't know how to rationalize what was going on there. But, so thankfully, over time now, I've started to have some of my own experiences. But I've realized, like, how I am. I'm kind of that fourth group. I mean, I'm supposed to be all about this, right? I'm supposed to be all about this kind of stuff. But I experience it, and then it takes a while for me to process it, to even talk about it. And some things I that were so weird, I just kind of shut them out and didn't deal with them for years. So I wonder now, like, how many other people are going through that? How many other people have something extraordinary happen, and then it's fleeting? I mean, all my experiences have been totally fleeting, and then back to the mundane reality. You know, like the workaday life. You know, you gotta be thinking about a tremendous amount of things, you know, in this world to get things done. So you just go on to that, and then all this numinous experience, this extraordinary, you know, gets just shuffled away or under the rug or something like that. And I'm wondering how many people are really experiencing such things. And
Sure.
it just
What you
goes
described
unrecognized.
with two things. One is a colleague of mine, when she runs her tour, her experience is this, that for her, the majority of people who experience something are not those who are hysterical during the tours, who freak out at the drops on the shoulder or the shadow in the dark. You know, what they are is, in fact, they tend to come up after the tour, not during it. They don't say, "Hey, I see something over there, there's something going on." These people come up afterwards and very quietly say, "Hey, there's something weird was going on." You know? So there is this fourth camp. Maybe I think it's absolutely accurate. There you go. Validated by somebody else. Thank you.
Well, okay, so you had your own experiences too, like that scratch you were telling me about across your chest.
Yeah.
And that to me, whoa, you know, something happened there. I mean, I've never been actually touched. Holding out hope. One day, gonna get maimed by a ghost. Put that on my tombstone. Eaten by Mothman. I will have lived a full life. I'm sorry. So tell me about your experience with the scratch.
Well, I was looking through your. You remember I was looking through your bio earlier on for the Hawaii Paracon website, and at the bottom of that is that picture that has a little speech bubble above your head saying, "I'm for a good maiming." Whatever it says.
That was one of my New Year's resolutions this year. Get maimed by a ghost. Put yourself in harm's way at every opportunity. So tell me about your scratch.
Right. The scratch. It is like many things. I mean, I was walking. That's where I did a tour. Ended up in the Black Mausoleum. Through 2 jumpers, a t-shirt, and a thick leather jacket, I ended up with a scratch about, I'm going to say 3 mil in diameter, and maybe here to here. So what's it? You can't see it on the screen there. I'm going to say maybe 8 centimeters or so in length, bleeding lightly.
So it was bleeding. Wow. So and how many centimeters did you say?
Sorry? About 8 centimeters or so in length, about 3 mil in diameter, and in width, rather. Yeah, I mean, I could have acquired that anywhere, you know, but I didn't feel it. So,
yeah.
I would love to say to you, you know, yes, I was scratched by something I couldn't see, and that was my experience of the Mackenzie poltergeist. But I think that would be disingenuous. And it would lack the intellectual rigor that I would like people to apply to their experiences. And this reminds me of our first conversation together at the Chicago Paracon last year. I'd say about this time, in fact, almost 10 months ago. When people jump to an answer without anything to support it, in particular in the case of something that is really so out with the norms of everyday experience for a large number of people, with nothing to support that claim, it's very shaky ground indeed. And I don't think it does the not even just the science, but the investigation into what is actually going on any good. I felt nothing. I don't mean like I'm totally flat emotionally. I mean
I am a Vulcan. That's it. What you see is what you get.
Yeah.
I'm a statue.
But this is very common for people experiencing the scratches as they go through this black mausoleum, as they experience this phenomenon. When people, the most people have experienced, it's usually some kind of prickling sensation, maybe some kind of heat, like a saucepan being heated up or so, but just like on the body, and they don't pay attention to it because it's to the back of their mind. And then when they come out 3-5 minutes later, that's when they find they've got the welts, the scratches, the bite marks, the bruises, the burns, things like this. Somebody, and we're talking a long time ago now, maybe 8 years old ago, maybe 10 years ago, described it very nicely as akin to spiders crawling through their hair. That was, but that's quite graphic, isn't it?
Yes,
yeah, it's quite
I like that.
That's
fantastic.
The strength of it. Nobody ever. I mean, occasionally people get the fear sensation of being punched or kicked. Sometimes you see people's heads being whipped around a little bit.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
so that's significant.
These are infrequent. And people get all sorts of muscular twitches when they're falling asleep, when they're going into trances, when they relax, when they lose some tension, or even just getting a little shiver and things like this. And I have no way of knowing, I don't think people on the whole have any way of knowing really what they're primed to experience inside of these locations. And so as we go through, usually I am as vague on details.
We have a friend here. Go ahead. He just wants
to
talk.
Because I know that you've been sharing some pictures of ghost cats.
No, this is an actual cat. This is...
That was real, is it? What a relief.
Yes, I think so. I mean, it's hard to know, but she feels pretty real.
Gotcha.
This is Moxie.
Hi, cat.
she just wants some attention. Go ahead.
I don't even know where we were with this. Oh, scratch, that's right.
Yeah.
So not feeling it, but then people scratch themselves throughout the day without feeling it anyway. So I did not check myself every 5 minutes, prior to this to find out when it actually happened.
Right.
But I don't recall running into anything on the way in. There's no reason for it to be there because I didn't slam my chest into anything, certainly not hard enough to cause a wound like this. So, yeah. It happens, and I'm mindful of that. I really am. It's just one of a fairly lengthy list of weird goings-on that we struggle to explain.
Yeah. So, okay, tell a little bit more about the Mackenzie poltergeist. And because, from what I've seen, this is really the most active haunt that I've heard of. And, yeah, so it's really significant. So talk a little bit about, what is experienced there, for example.
Sure, experience there. So, we started back in 1998. The nearby tomb of George Mackenzie, the King's advocate, the King's right-hand man, way back in the late 1600s. His tomb is desecrated. The tomb and the location, they're not far apart. The tomb sits maybe like 100 feet or so from this black mausoleum. There's no real reason why these two places, the specific tomb of the black mausoleum, the name of the people in the tomb, I do know, it's just escaping me right now. Will not be impressed.
Oh, sure they will. No worries.
It'll come back to me later in a moment of information Tourette's, I think. So these two locations are not themselves inherently linked by virtue of who is buried in them. But they are by history. And the Covenanters prison, within which the Mackenzie poltergeist, within which the Black Mausoleum resides, is the site of where George Mackenzie sent 1,200 people known as Covenanters to what was essentially, I believe, an early version of a concentration camp. Left them in there locked up to contemplate their religious beliefs. After committing, I think, probably a tantamount to treason. And it's such a complex picture of our history. He sent these people there essentially to their death over a couple of months in a cold Scottish winter, a real cold Scottish winter. I know we don't experience the cold in quite the same way that you get it up towards the border with Canada and around the lakes.
Yes.
It was it was cold enough for these people's suffering to be dragged out over a substantial period, and intentionally so, to send a very strong message about treason, about telling a lie. So it is linked with this, and yet the man himself was buried a Christian, absolved of his sins. He was extraordinarily, as I understand it, an early proponent, one of the foremost thinkers at the time, that people were not inherently evil, that people ended up in prisons and places like this for their, terrible behaviours, that they could be educated out of this, that they ended up there perhaps as a result of their circumstance, and not because that was inherently within them, because they were the lower, baser classes. And that, for the late 1600s, is an extraordinary position to take, very brave. And it could be argued that he could have taken more of a stand about sending these people to their doom. I wasn't there. All I know is about the research that I've done, that my colleagues have done, that my manager's done into these things, and this man, and what happened. So, it really is it's easy to make an easy narrative out of it, but the complexity of it makes it much more challenging to pin this particular phenomenon on him.
Yeah,
in any case.
We don't know who it is. We just know that something is happening there. It's happening in the mausoleum or outside of it. Where do people get
Sure.
hurt?
So these locations...
so I can know where to go for my maiming. Put a red X on the ground.
What we do know is that in 1998, his tomb, Mackenzie's tomb, is desecrated, and people start experiencing things outside of his doorstep, and that's the one on the Hawaii Paracon picture.
Yes, that you're standing right outside, like it's no big deal.
I don't know why I'm so serious, mate. I used to hate photographs, so there you go. I guess I had a photograph panic moment. I don't know.
Oh, come on.
I really do. The attacks, these phenomena start happening on his doorstep, and for a long time people had been taunting his ghost by standing on his doorstep, shouting things like "Mackenzie, Mackenzie, come out and get me." Some kind of variations on this.
Yeah.
But this is I think this stage folklore. I don't know much of how much.
So you don't know anything about the veracity of that. So if you were going to instruct me in how to get maimed, what would you say? Where do I go? What do I do? Step one.
I'm curious. We're digressing from the original point so much.
All right.
This in a moment. The activity from these phenomena, people getting interacted with in certain ways, in physical ways, or dropping temperatures, the cold spots. The early stories go of things like people being physically struck in their head by an icy cold fist of air and falling down the steps. This activity moves around into the prison area of the graveyard, and before the tours actually start, people are experiencing stuff up and down this area. This prison is, I'm not so good at estimating distances, but I'd say, let's say for argument's sake, like a strip of land 100 odd feet, right? Maybe 150 feet or so in length. It's not that far in width, maybe 15, 20 feet from the wall of each of the mausoleums. And the mausoleums, these ancient things, line the sides all the way down and to the back as well, housing some of Edinburgh's movers and shakers, I guess. From the... Oh, man. When was that portion of it added to the graveyard? It was the last portion to be added as a graveyard, in his land dedicated to graves, and it would have been done after it was turned into a prison. So the latter part of the 17th century, early part of the 18th, I think, thereabout, anyways. So, yes, that's accurate. So it eventually starts to focus in this one particular tomb, and once this, someone decides to go and exercise the place. I don't want to give too much away, actually, because the tour is largely about this.
Yes, don't give too much away.
The information is out there. The information is out there in print, in newspapers.
Let me just say.
Well, let's hope. Well, yes, this minister did not do so well out of this. Dies a couple of weeks later, 6 odd weeks or so, and it makes it into the papers. And at this point, the guy who started the company with a confederate of his, who lives nearby to the graveyard, just cannot resist. He's an absolute oddball. He's a really interesting guy, and he just jumps on it. He starts taking people into this portion of the graveyard, starts up a deal with the council, and gets sole access.
And by now there's been about 500 reported attacks. So these mean like scratches, burns, other marks, right?
I think there's been substantially more than that now. I don't think anybody has gone through we've held it at 490 for the last 5 to 8 years or so. So there's much more than that. And many of these interactions are not reported in our annals, in our records either. It turns out that it can be remarkably tricky for 2 reasons to get people to confess to such an experience. One is getting them to, especially if it's been something dramatic, getting them to come in and write it down, put their signature next to it in some way of contacting them to demonstrate that we have, due process, right, due diligence. We have not just, if we can make this stuff up, I'm sure many places enjoy something like this.
Too many, I think.
We've got to put a bit of rigor into this. So get them to come into our little office in the graveyard, write these things down, put a contact detail to it.
Oh, that's great that you guys are doing that.
And for people to, especially if they are non-believers, that doesn't mean that it's changed their life. The other thing you reminded me of earlier on was, I want to tell people on my tours, if you're a fence sitter and you're coming along and you're hoping for that experience that is just going to change your world, change your opinion, that you can sit back on and say, right, this is the moment when I just believed. For the vast majority of people who are fence sitters, it doesn't happen that way. Even if they experience something that's quite weird, or they catch something out of the corner of their eye, or they experience, the chills inside, these horrible black sensations, whatever it is, even then, it's rarely is it enough to convince a fence sitter that there is something there.
Well, maybe it just doesn't work that way, right? I mean, maybe it's a gradual growth that you have from one viewpoint to another, and maybe nothing would shake somebody into just instant belief. Sure.
Well, I think those that do end up being firm believers, and they're already in the other camp.
Yeah, absolutely.
But sitting on the fence in the middle, the chances are they've already experienced a bunch of weird stuff throughout their life, and they have either overlooked it or thought, okay, let's see if it happens again, whatever it is. So, for someone to come along and confess to, for example, we had my phone had such a great picture. This guy came in. He had get this prickling sensation for the last 5 minutes or so inside the tomb. At the end, a welt about this size, back of the neck, back here, about this wide or so, raised maybe about so much. No, that's not accurate. About so much above his neck, like a really angry red thing. Terrified. Terrified. And there is no way we can calm some. Some people do calm down enough, but for these people, they're only interested in one thing. That is, how long is this going to last for?
Yeah, I have to get out.
Where is the nearest pub?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So this happens, and then we're talking about the fourth camp as well. These people who experience stuff. I wonder if this is going to be like a meme at some point. I don't know. Fourth camp. I don't know.
We can only hope. The fourth camp. We coined it today. Or you did.
Yeah. So these people who do experience stuff, and they might whisper something afterwards, saying, "Hey, I don't believe it. This is weird, right? What do you make of this?" And they won't put down anything, and nor should they be expected to. That's their experience.
So, are you still a fence sitter? What would you say?
Absolutely. I am aware that people can experience all sorts of stuff because the mind manifests it, and that for me is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And I do not doubt that for these people their experiences are real, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But what are they?
Okay, so all right, this is a good point to do a little bit of a turn. So so let's hold on to that and just say, so you are a fence sitter in the sense of you don't know what's happening, but you would acknowledge that something extraordinary is happening. Is that correct?
Of
Okay.
course.
All right. So you're not like a cynic or a total materialist or anything like that. I mean,
it's proof of process. That's what I want.
Okay. All right. Well, that's reasonable.
Both sides. For both sides.
Yes.
I don't think it's like for people to come along and say, no, you're just making it up. Like, we construct our reality at every moment of the day, of the night, when we're dreaming. Like, that's a cop-out. Right? But I don't think the onus should be on some kind of scientific process. No, that's not accurate. There should be a scientific process to it, but it's very hard to do for phenomenological stuff, for experience. Deconstructing experience on the basis of a scientific process, very challenging to construct, especially for someone who isn't, it's a challenge for someone who is well trained in science and process. For the layperson, it's a big ask. I do think that there should be
that could be a meme too, the big ask.
Right.
Make sure you put the K in there. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, big ask. I also think that for people to say it's poltergeist, it's some kind of ethereal entity for which we have no formal evidence. We just have a few scraps of stuff that is challenging, I think, to fall back on and say, yes, this is reliable, verifiable, validatable, can be recreated independently. Like, without this, I think it's very shaky foundations as well. Now, for people who are skeptics, come along and say, no, you're making it up. Well, that's enormously disrespectful, and it doesn't surprise me at all that we get this pushed back against it. Because no one likes having their experience denied.
And let's say, though, that is not skepticism. That is cynicism. That is anti-scientific. For them to say, you just made it up. Because they do not know what criteria are they using, what proofs do they have, nothing. So they're kind of in the same place as, kind of a dyed-in-the-wool believer. So I think, we're at a similar place where, we acknowledge that extraordinary things do happen, but what do you do with that? And what is the nature of that? I mean, there's so much more to explore. So let's explore a little bit of that, because I know you were just saying about manifesting your reality. So let's go that way and talk a little bit about hypnosis and other altered states. Things that could teach us a little bit more about the human condition.
Go, all right. Give me a starting, Alison, because that is a big topic.
All right. Well, we got a few more minutes anyway.
All right. Give me a starting point. What are you angling for here?
Well, so you were saying, people can manifest. So like people can manifest, like these scratches, for example. Like under hypnosis, I know people have manifested like rope burns and other things because they just really believed that was happening to them. So talk a little bit more about what you know about that, and what could we use these things for?
Gosh, right, that's still a huge topic. Okay.
I know. Just start talking.
Just return to the phrase you used, under hypnosis.
Right.
I think that this is perhaps perpetuating a stereotype and a myth of hypnosis that is largely inaccurate.
Well, school me, Fred. I'm ready.
Yeah, sure, right. And I think it's frustrating. I think there has been, there's been a struggle for hypnotists, hypnotherapists, people studying these, I guess, perhaps esoteric arts. And now more scientific, I suppose. There's been plenty of research into the phenomenon, although still no consensus as to what actually is going on. There has been sort of a misconception about it from the old hypnosis, like, look into my eyes, you're feeling sleepy.
Oh, that's it. I'm even going to fall over right now.
Yeah. And it's just not the case. But hypnotherapists have rallied against it for a long time, saying, that it's not about this. It's not about an expression of power. There is some measure of consent in there. You can't be hypnotized or anything you don't want to do. It's a relaxed sense of possibility. It's an openness to suggestion and taking on board new ideas. And I think even that is a misconception and a myth about hypnosis that is perpetuated, unfortunately, by hypnotherapists who the more cynical and tough people would describe as relaxotherapy instead of hypnotherapy itself. It's like anyone who's had a bunch of experiences or been around people who have experienced things where they have been panicky, right, or some kind of heightened emotion. These people are also wide open to suggestion as well. Now, I've been privy to listening and sitting on some not seances. What would you describe them as? Some investigations into things around the Black Mausoleum and various other places. And to me, these investigations are just hypnosis. Absolutely. People have been primed by someone in a position of authority to sit there or stand there and listen to them. They come up with things like, yes, show us there's somebody here, let that symbol, let that signal occur more clearly so that we know it's really happening. That's right, let it happen more clearly. Like, this is just hypnosis to me. There's no...
People can use it for deception and for leading people in the way that they want them to go. And I have a friend too who's a magician, and he, I was talking to him about hypnosis the other day, and he was saying, Allison, it is absolutely real. It is not bunk. And I know because, I've watched, I've been in a room with anthropologists, and they had these films of these people who were getting actual surgery. They were getting actually operated on, and they had no anesthetic. It was just hypnosis that allowed them to have surgery and not feel the pain. And so he's like really against, stage hypnosis. He thinks that is a serious violation. It's like almost raping somebody. That's how he refers to it, because it's really something deep that's happening to you, and you don't just muck around in there and then go, okay, bye.
There is definitely two views on the stage hypnosis. I don't know how I feel about it, actually. Like, it's kind of more complex. When people go to a stage hypnosis show, there's the expectation they might well be called on. People, by and large, are not idiots. You have to be of a certain level of intelligence for the hypnosis to be genuinely effective, because you've got to be able to understand instructions, follow along, imagine things, interpret what's going on. So he's not idiots getting up on stage. They're not simpletons. They are relatively smart, intelligent people who are making a choice. Right, now, what point that choice happens, it's tricky to say. When people get up on stage, they know that they're getting up there to perform. There is implied consent within it. There are various ways of giving instructions, giving suggestions to these people. Now, we know that around about 25% of people walking around us are what are described as somnambulists.
Yes, talk about that.
So these are people who respond very powerfully to suggestions, right? And these people are often ones who believe the last thing they've been told, right? You might know them as maybe gullible, suggestible, and yeah, their lives can be kind of tricky sometimes, depending on who's giving them the suggestions and who they're choosing to believe. Um,
Well,
but these are also people who can get out of like extraordinary emotional hurdles. These are people who respond powerfully to simple suggestions, so that they can change their lives in a heartbeat, which is a remarkable trait that I think we'd all do well to model.
and not only that, the reason I reacted to the term as soon as you said it is because I'm working on a book on Catherine Crowe, and Catherine
Yes, you
Crowe.
are. I'm going to quiz you about this as well. Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, she was really the mother of modern paranormal investigation, and she talks a lot about those type of people in her groundbreaking book, The Night Side of Nature, and talks about how they can have these extraordinary like revelatory experiences and psychic experiences. So she talks about them quite a lot. So it's not it's like I'm trying to see how I think about how I see these people. It's not like, oh, they're gullible, they believe whatever, but that they are open to like maybe another plane. Maybe they still are able to critically think, but maybe they're open to something, or it's easier to get for them to get to something that we might struggle with.
It's possible, but I think it's worth remembering in the same context that each of us have our own belief systems, and lots of those we acquired through hypnosis as well, right? Just because of the nature, this is how we work. Now, if you were to say to me, "What's hypnosis, Fred?" I shrug my shoulder at you. It's like, I don't know what that is. So I don't know, it's tough. But we do. We make up all sorts of decisions based on stuff, and oftentimes those belief systems come about when we're not really paying attention. Lots of them come about from when we're children. Anyone who believes that hypnosis is dangerous, right? Well, how do you know? Because someone told you? Well, what do you think hypnosis is? Someone tells you something and you believe it. So, there is nothing specific about having your eyes closed and someone who describes themselves as a hypnotist, doing something they're describing as hypnotizing you, that makes this different to just living our everyday lives. Someone tells you best coffee here, you go in because you think it might be the best coffee there. You have a sip of the coffee and you believe it's the best coffee because someone told you, right? The placebo effect. That is hypnosis right there. It's hypnosis because it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody telling you stuff. It can be implied in another way. That was exciting. This hypnosis, social expectation, all this stuff is going on around us all the time. So, what was the point? The point is, yes, people have extraordinary experiences using just their mind. There's plenty of evidence of this surgery. This man's name is escaping me. Is it Esdale? I'll have to look it up. No, it's not. Man, damn. A hypnotist who was based out in India before we had chloroform, right? Who discovered that by doing a little sentence before people went into having surgery, that they could get away without dangerous levels of alcohol, stuff like this. It was when we had ether, but no reliable anesthesia. Thank you. Yes, doing this. His success rate was staggering in India without sterilizing everything, stuff like this. It was just staggering. When the Mayo Clinic started looking into it, they were sent the most challenging cases for various things, and by giving the nurse something like a small paragraph, maybe 4 lines typed on a page, by getting the nurse to read people this paragraph as they were going into surgery, when they're not relaxed, I assure you, right, terrified, right, but they were open to suggestion at this point. The information goes straight in, and being told this is what's going to happen. You're on a gurney, you're going into surgery. In a moment, these things are going to happen to you. Later on, you're going to find that you recover. So just pacing their experience, telling them what's happening as it's happening, and telling them they're going to heal quickly without any complications. The bare minimum of this meant that their success rates went through the roof. And bear in mind, this was when they were being given the most challenging cases around. Right? And all it took was a paragraph. They had skilled surgeons as well, right? They're not idiots. They know what they're doing. But this extra bit added on to what they're already doing just changed the game altogether for them in terms of the success rate. So we know these things can happen. We know that from a long time ago, we're aware of healing temples, the Egyptians, people like this, putting people into trances using ritual, and shamans doing the same thing. These things can be remarkably powerful, especially in the moment where we are like, okay, right, this is a bit weird. What's going to happen? And we're open to suggestions. Friends of mine have this. It's something like, it's a 5 or 15 minute, the 5 or 15 minute phrase where someone's asking like, wait, that feels so good. What's going on? Is this going to last? How long's it been since whenever? You're saying, yeah, it's just been 5 minutes or so. It'll pass in a moment. Okay? And because the sense of time starts to disappear for us quite often, for some people, with these experiences, right? Of course, right? You just take it on board. All right, okay, thank goodness for that. Like, each of us have this power. You don't have to train for 10 years to be enormously competent as a hypnotist, just to give your friends and people who are having a hard day some reassuring, well-phrased, positive suggestions that they can take on board at a time when they really just need someone to tell them, yeah, okay, it's a shitty day. Think about this. Yeah, so back to the point, Alison. People can heal. We know people can manifest like welts, burns, things like this. We know that they can do extraordinary things when they're in states that which they're best to describe this. Like I was talking with you initially in our initial talks with Lo Parker and Dana and Greg and Mike as well, and Parker's wife Tanya.
Yeah.
That when we're small, we don't know differently. Think about how challenging walking is. When we try to model it mathematically, it works out like an inverted pendulum is one of the models. If we were to think about every step that we would have to take and the actual mechanics of how you go about walking, we'd never get started. We just wouldn't. But children, they don't know. Their babies don't know any different. They haven't been told you cannot walk because it's too challenging. Right? So they just keep doing it and doing it and doing it until they get up and they take a couple of steps and then they get further and further and further, and they go from like crawling to, or bum shucking I guess, to crawling to walking to running to walking and talking at the same time.
And sometimes chewing gum.
Right? And chewing gum at the same time. But just think about what's involved in talking. To model to actually control our breathing, our voice box, all of this stuff. Like it just and to do the thing, also to try and like turn this into sound waves to transmit complex thoughts and concepts to other people to take on board as they're walking and chewing gum as well. Like boggling.
So what you were saying, it just reminds me so much of Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a Buddhist, and talks about like just the modern the miracles of every day, not modern, just any day, any time, just the miraculous nature of life, and just that you can sit and you can. This is one of his images, like you can eat an orange, and just think about how incredible that is, that you are on this world, spinning in space, and that you're eating this orange, and, just the incredible sensations you get out of that, and existence itself. Yeah. So I like to think about that at times of challenge, eating the orange, just go eat the orange. And it seems to me that that's akin to what you're talking about there, that there's so many miracles that go on every day, and which is great. There's a Catherine Crowe quote that I'll send you later, which totally embodies that as well.
Good. I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
And so I know we're running low on time here, but I don't know. Could you tell us a little bit about Mind Spa? And I know that's a big topic as well.
Sure. Yeah. So I was curious. Is it in the way that how best to describe this? I think yes. I'm reminded of a stress management course that I was teaching for some doctor's surgeries around the place. One of the slides I put in was something that occurred to me that kind of threw people a bit. It's surprising, which is stress is contagious. I think it is. If you see a stressed person around you, quite often people start to take on a little bit of that stress as well, not really know how, why, maybe they attribute it to something else, but yeah, stress can be catching, absolutely. And like if we have a stressed person out there affecting like a bunch of people, the same thing is true as if we have a bunch of happy, well-adjusted people who feel that they have some measure of agency, some measure of control in their life. And it doesn't take a lot to get that. And if all we have to do is to be the person who can take a step back, take a breath, get calm, and get a perspective on something, or just be that person who's out there being calm, acting calm around other people, that can be contagious as well. Right? It's the easiest way to affect the most number of people is to change ourselves first. Right? Very simple. And Mind Spa was born out of this, really. They are, and also out of this. Like, I have listened to a whole bunch of Hypnosis CDs, and I am bored to. I'm just bored. 60 minutes. Who's got 60 minutes in a workday to do this? So they also like it's just you're walking down a slope and it's really comfortable and relaxing. It doesn't have to be like this. I find, occasionally, like there is a time for everything, I think. And I enjoyed these, say, CDs and tapes at that time. And when there is somebody there with you and they are measuring things for you and doing it at the same time as you're breathing and watching what's happening to the complexion, to the breathing, to the body, to the muscle tonality, all of these things, and having a good idea as to what's going on, then it's very powerful. And a CD, I don't know, 60 minutes of this stuff, I want to hear a decent story. I want to get engaged and absorbed in stuff. I want to, so they're shorter. They're about 25 minutes. Right? They have got like a beautiful track to them. I love the music, put together by a colleague of mine who's a very talented musician. Yeah, it's lovely, and it means something so special to me as well that he created this for me. And it just sounds great. It's binaural. It's got all the stuff in the music is designed to shift the neurology, to shift the mind and the brain down into its trance state, so you don't get a chance to resist. Right?
So there are binaural beats in there, is what you're saying. Yep.
Yeah. I think the science behind it is somewhat contentious. Like, it definitely has an effect on us, but whether it's beneficial or not, like in the way that people describe, is another matter. But I figure, let us just stack all the odds in your favor. Let me take loads of the hard work out of this, so that it's so simple that all you've got to do is sit down and be engaged and absorbed in an entertaining story. Oh, and by the way, underneath all of this, you're learning 4 or 5 different ways to relax profoundly whenever you desire. Right? This is something extraordinary. Right? This is really nice. So, yeah. And what is nice is that as an exercise, I wrote it for myself so I could sleep better. So I'd have something to keep this meat still. I think the science shows, the evidence shows that, the research shows that as long as the body is still, there is a substantial amount of healing that goes on. And I think that's quite reassuring, that even if we have turbulent sleep patterns, right, we're not as reliable and comfortable as we'd like, as long as this physical form is still, we are still getting benefit. right? So there is definite. We know that if we don't sleep at all, like people say they're insomniacs, but in fact they just don't sleep as well as they would like, right? And it can be very challenging for them. It's not to detract from their experience, right, and the struggle. But in fact, they still get some sleep, the vast majority. We know that if people do not sleep at all for some period, there is real damage that happens, psychosis and worse. Sometimes people also just like wriggle a lot. It's tricky keeping this all in one place. They've got loads of energy. I can attest to that. I can appreciate that. I find it tricky keeping my voice measured because I like getting really excited and chatty too quickly, right? So the purpose of this for me was to keep me locked in one place. Locked is not an appropriate choice of words. It's to keep me absorbed, entertained, engaged, the body in one place, so that it was staying still. So that I did have 25 minutes where the body I knew was staying in one place. Or I think a little bit of a wriggling every now and again, but it's in one place, so it's getting some benefit. And that's encouraging my mind just to get some rest, just to keep doing this. And, oh, by the way, I'm still learning, I'm still installing 5-6 different ways of relaxing profoundly. When I cross the park and I'm going to work and I'm thinking, what's going on? When I'm going to do tours and I'm thinking, I haven't done this for a while, what's going to happen? Bam, right? Just these little pieces of visualization, little reminders that are bookmarks in the mind to say, this is what I want. And immediately, a wave of relaxation travels through my body. And I'm there. Right. And this is just a free one that's available from my Facebook page or through the website. I promise I'll get that fixed up real soon. The other ones like Ditching Stress at the Push of a Button, The Inner Goddess. Did I send that to you yet?
No, still waiting.
Right, okay.
I could totally use that stress at a push of a button thing. Yes, because I have, going back, I'm a teacher as well as my paranormal craziness that I do, and so it's always quite a shift. Re-entry can be really rough if you haven't done it in a while and you have all these different personalities to deal with. So yeah, I'd love to preview anything like that. And how can people find out more? Where is your website?
The website is at mindspaodyssey.com. That's ODYSSEY. It's also available to the Facebook page at facebook.com/mindspaodyssey. The journey into relaxation is available from there. I have yet to re-record The Inner Goddess. I think you'll enjoy that one, Alison. It surprises me. My life I've been surrounded and filled with these remarkably strong, independent women who are capable of so much, real leaders in their field, and I was kept largely in the dark about the struggles it had to deal with on a daily basis, working twice as hard as the males in their field to get there. These people are mothers and carers and translators or professionals, scientists, all the rest of the stuff. Who care about so much, business women, managers, owners, and they never got the credit they deserved. They had to work so hard to get where they were, and it baffles me that people in any part of the world, and perhaps it's more relevant today than it ever has been in your neck of the woods, over there, over the pond, that they're marginalized in this way, and that women forget that they're capable of extraordinary things. Right, they're capable of doing all this. Again, this back to this also. We tend to live down to our expectations, live down to our beliefs about things, and it saddens me. It really does. I don't think people should be. Well, I don't want to shuttle over everyone, but I think if that we all could benefit from being reminded, regardless of gender, sex, sexuality. Even religion or political affiliation, we could all do with being reminded of we're capable of so much more. We really are. And this Inner Goddess is my way of giving back to the extraordinary women in my life who has given me so much. That's the point.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Be released soon.
Okay, well, I look forward to it. So, is there anything else that you would like to add? I could talk to you all day, but I know you have a lot of things going on.
There is so we could talk about stuff. I think spraff as the Scots say. We can spraff for forever like this. But let us save something for. Let us not give it all away up front. Let us save something for our projects in the future, whatever they may be, something they run. And I have written down a whole bunch of questions that I would like to quiz you about.
Oh, uh-oh.
But you'll have to wait for another day.
Yes.
Video number 2.
Okay. Well, I look forward to it. I look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Most welcome. Thank you, Alison.